All right, let's get right into this because we're about to break down one of the most wild stories in modern trading. We're going deep inside the mind of Steven Dux, a trader who pulled off something that, well, it just sounds made up. And we're going to unpack the exact blueprint he used to do it.
Everything starts right here, with $27,000. Now, that's a good chunk of change for most of us, but in the world of high-stakes trading, it's practically nothing. A tiny starting stake. That was all he had to work with.
He took that initial investment and, get this, in just a handful of years, he turned it into
this, over $50 million. And yeah, that's a verified number. We're talking about returns that are just off the charts, including one single month where he pocketed $20 million. It's insane.
So this is the big question, right? How on earth does that happen? Was it just a crazy lucky streak, some kind of secret algorithm, or was it something else entirely, something deeper, rooted in psychology and just unbelievable discipline? Let's find out.
The very first piece of the puzzle, and honestly, it might be the most important one, is understanding the core problem Dux knew he had to solve. And you know what? It wasn't about the market. It was about himself. And this quote right here, it basically sums up his entire philosophy. Dux figured out really early that the stock market is a machine that feeds on our most basic instincts. You know, greed, fear, hope, excitement. All those feelings are your absolute worst enemy in this game. To win, you'd have to literally fight against what your own brain is screaming at you to do.
And this slide, well, it shows you the brutal truth of the game. Dux says that 90% of new traders don't just lose money, they actually become gamblers. They get that first taste of a big win, get totally addicted to the rush, and then just blow up their entire account chasing that high. They let their human nature run the show.
So let's put these two mindsets side by side. The average trader hits a big win, and what do? They immediately double their risk on the next trade. They make a mistake and they get emotional. Dux does the complete opposite. Every single time he makes a mistake, he sizes down his position by 50%. See, his main goal isn't to hit massive home runs, it's just to survive, to stay in the game long enough to win.
Okay, so how did he build on this idea? He didn't just see the problem, he actually engineered a system to hack his own brain. This is his mental blueprint for dealing with success, which, believe it or not, can be way more dangerous than failure.
He called out this thing we can call the winner's curse. He realized that getting a huge win right at the start is one of the worst things that can happen to a new trader. Why? Because it gives you this massive ego, makes you feel invincible, and leads you right down the path to reckless gambling. And the market just loves to punish arrogance.
So, to fight this, he came up with this brilliant little mental trick. After a huge win, let's say $1 million, he would immediately pull out 80% of it, so $800,000. But here's the genius part. He would then tell himself over and over again that he lost that money. By tricking his brain into thinking that withdrawal was a massive loss, he forces himself to be super cautious on the very next trade. It completely kills that ego trip before it can even start.
And just to make sure his ego never gets out of control, he created this imaginary ideal in his head, the perfect trader. A totally robotic, emotionless version of himself that makes every single move perfectly, based only on data. After he made that $20 million in 1 month, when everyone was calling him a genius, he compared himself to this perfect trader and decided he was still, in his words, a trash trader. That's how deep his commitment to staying humble goes.
All right, so we've covered the psychology, the whole why behind his success. Now let's get into the how. Dux's entire trading strategy is just an extension of that mindset. He builds systems that are based on predictable human emotions, and then he backs it all up with cold, hard data.
Here's a classic example of one of his plays. Imagine a stock tanks, dropping from $10 to $1. A ton of buyers are now trapped, holding a losing bag. Months later, the stock suddenly jumps up to $7. What do you think all those trapped buyers do? They rush to sell, just happy to break even or cut their losses. It's a totally predictable emotional reaction. Dux knows this is going to happen, so he shorts the stock, betting it'll go down, and profits from that wave of panic selling he saw coming a mile away.
But here is the absolute key. He doesn't just guess. He takes that basic idea and he backtests it over and over and over. He doesn't just trade small stocks. He knows from his data that this pattern works best with stocks that have a $10 to $100 million market cap. He knows the perfect volume. He even knows the average reward of the trade down to a decimal point, something like negative 26.4%. He totally replaces feelings with statistics.
So this brings us all the way back around to the real heart of his success. It's about that razor-thin line that separates the top 1% from the 90% who fail. It's the fundamental difference between being a professional trader and just being a gambler.
I want you to really think about this quote. If Dux makes money on a trade that broke his rules, a trade he made based on a lucky guess or an impulse, he doesn't celebrate. He actually sees that money as a problem. Why? Because he knows that reinforcing bad habits, even if you win once, is a guaranteed way to lose everything in the long run.
So, what are the big takeaways from Steven Dux's blueprint? Well, first, trading is a mind game, period. Second, you have to build systems to protect yourself from your own emotions. Third, your edge has to come from statistics, not from a gut feeling. Fourth, you have to study your losses like a hawk to learn and get better. And finally, the biggest one, focus on perfecting your process. The money, that's just a side effect of doing things the right way.
And that's really the final thought I want to leave you with. It doesn't matter if it's trading, business, or anything else where the stakes are high. Ask yourself, are you carefully building a repeatable, data-driven process, or are you just chasing the thrill of the next big payout? The answer to that question, well, it might just change everything.